Welcome to Superbots are here to save the data. 2020 AFCEA Army Signal Conference. My name is Bill Bunce. I'm the Director of Public Sector at Automation Anywhere. Let's start our conversation by talking about agility and innovation. For example, let's take the Fortune 500 companies from the year 2000. The reality is that 52% of those companies no longer exist. Why is that? Other companies were able to step in and be more agile and more innovative and dominate the market with more modern technology and efficiency. Efficiency, agility, innovation is nothing new to the U.S. Army. What we're going to talk about today is using modern technology to become much more efficient. For example, my company, Automation Anywhere, recently took a poll of 10,000 employees across multiple different industries. One of the things that we found, specifically in public sector, is the average employee spends 3.5 hours a day on administrative computer tasks. All of those employees agree that if they didn't have to do those administrative tasks, they could clearly be much more efficient and get a lot more done throughout the day. I think we've been thinking about this question all wrong. So we've been applying automation for many years, 30 years, for example. So why haven't we automated more business processes? According to Gartner, upwards of 60 to 80% of most organizations' processes have not been automated, even though we've been using tools like SAP and Oracle for many, many years. My thought is that we've been going about the problem all wrong. So instead of a top-down approach and looking at what are our processes, what are the systems we should be automating, another way to approach this is bottom-up. If we went to each and every employee and asked the simple question, if you had a digital assistant to help you throughout the day, what is it that you would want that digital assistant to do for you? Take any process. This process happens to be a quote to cash, order to cash process, but the process is really irrelevant. We'll go ahead and get it started. The average enterprise, public sector or commercial, has 1,500 to 2,000 applications running in that enterprise in order to run their business on a day-to-day basis. The U.S. Army is no exceptions to that. Thousands of systems that we have to interact with on a day-to-day basis. By taking automation and driving it through the center of that process and automating every step where a human has to step in and take a manual process, the reality is that there's hundreds of opportunities to automate the process and drop the amount of time that it takes to process menial tasks, most business tasks from, in this case, 35 to 5. And that's a reality across many different workloads and processes. So again, I asked the question, what is it that you want your digital assistant to do for you today? Let's begin to aggregate the answers to that question and begin to tackle those very small, very easy to automate, very quick processes that we can automate across the enterprise starting today. So the reality is, what's the vision? Let's take the robot out of the human. Let's stop turning humans into robots. Let's liberate every human from these mundane, repetitive tasks, allowing them to do more intellectual. Let's allow them to really do their job, what we hired them to do, right? So what are the things that automation can do for you? And this is just 6. There's way more than this, but let's just look at a cycle of maybe 6 of them. Things like data capture, data enrichment, data validation, automated processes like the process that we just looked at, reconciliation of data, building reports, building quad charts. These are all things that a bot can be created to automate and do that process for you. That's your digital assistant that's going to help you automate the day and become much more efficient. So let's take, for example, this process here. This is a real process in the U.S. Army. It was implemented by Army ASALT, so Army Acquisition. There is a process where every time a contractor submits a bid to a contracting officer, the first thing that that contracting officer or contracting specialist has to do is they have to go out and do what's called contractor responsibility analysis. We have to make sure, that that contractor is not debarred from doing business with the Army or from the Department of Defense, answer approximately 2 pages of questions. The reality is that the U.S. Army does that process 750,000 times a year. And it takes upwards of 2 hours to execute that process each time. So an enormous effort on the part of these contracting officers. We were able to build an automation, build a bot, whereby a contracting officer sends a DUNS number via email to this bot, and the bot will go out and do that research, fill out a 2-page report, send that report back along with screen captures of all the research that it did, and complete that in 2 minutes versus 2 hours. So that automation was built in approximately 30 days, from the day the contractor was awarded to the day we were in implementation, approximately 3 months from end to end, saving the U.S. Army $29 million a year, approximately 14,500% return on investment. So why would we not want to do more of that? So let's talk about a couple different terms. I mentioned the term RPA, or robotic process automation. If that term is new to you, what we're talking about is creating automations based on structured data. Structured data is data in databases, in spreadsheets, where it's easy for us to understand, easy for the technology to understand what the data is. The data is a purchase order number, or it's a DUNS number. It is based on standard process rules, and those rules rarely change. And most importantly, there's lots of people doing this. So if we take the last example, 750,000 times a year, this process gets executed. It's exactly the same every single time. Let's leverage robotic process automation. Cognitive automation takes it a step further. Now we're talking about semi-structured and even unstructured data. So now we're looking at data that's on a form. That's somewhat semi-structured in that where the data is on the form, we don't know. But if I look at that form with some intelligence using machine learning, if I find some language on that form that says, let's say, invoice number or purchase order number, the system is smart enough to know that what follows that is probably the purchase order number or the invoice number. So we're looking at that technology using things like computer vision. Computer vision is the ability to look at pictures and recognize that, hey, that's a tank, and then apply logic to execute a business process. And ultimately, or then finally, analytics. Being able to leverage analytics across business processes and across RPA and cognitive automation to identify what people are doing, what teams are doing, how efficient we're operating, and look at improving efficiency over time and building that into, in this case, the Automation Anywhere platform. So let's talk about the definition of some of these terms a little bit more. You'll hear the term a bot. What is a bot? So in the intelligent automation space, you'll hear something called a bot runner. A bot runner is just software running on a server or a machine, or a laptop, but typically running on a server, and it's waiting for instructions. The instructions are the actual automation or the business process that someone has built into the system. So a bot is the combination of the automation that was built together with the bot runner. So the reality is that these bot runners are just sitting there on your servers waiting for directions to go out, execute an automation, and then when they're done, they tell what's called a control room that they've completed their automation, wait for a next automation, go off and do the next automation. They'll do that 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and with perfect accuracy every time. So the idea here is within the enterprise, within an organization, you build an unlimited number of these automations, you have a limited number of these bot runners, and you're applying these automations to your bot runners all day long, automating as much things as you can. So what can you automate? The reality is a lot. We're looking for those things that we said before. Structured data is better than unstructured data is easier, although we can certainly work with the unstructured data like we talked about, but across procurement, finance, human resource, also mission, IoT, all kinds of initiatives that we are automating today. My company, Automation Anywhere, is working with the Joint Artificial Intelligence Center at OSD on many use cases. And I recommend if you have a use case, reach out to the Jake and they're happy to help. So across entire federal government, to expand a little bit, intelligent automation and robotic process automation is applicable to cybersecurity, legacy systems. Here are heightened citizen expectations, expanding mission needs, employee brain drain, work backlogs, and so on. And we certainly absolutely meet the president's management agenda mandate to shift from low work to high work. And the recommendation is get started small, and it's easy to build on your successes. So with that, I really appreciate your time. Feel free to reach out to me. My email address is bill.bunce@automationanywhere.com. Go be great.